Is this year's playoffs a little extra aggro, or is it just me?
Changing here. McDavid, beautiful move. Front back the ball, over to Crosby. He scores! Crosby, 500!
Watch this play between the legs, comes right back to him.
But man, oh man, has his kid got some hands.
The net, it looks like he's going for the old Michigan. He brings it up. Miller goes to knock it off. He shoots it in front.
Oh, what a pass!
Away, gains the zone around Kubalik. Back to Foligno. He scores!
With a lot of mustard on it.
Ovechkin score! The Grade 8 Express pulls into third place all time.
This is the Pucked Up Podcast.
Welcome back, Mother Puckers, to the Pucked Up Podcast. I am your host, D-Bag, and I'm joined by the ever-lovely Danger Water and our leader in all things, Finn Tiff, or Chris, whichever you prefer.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Right.
Never.
Just don't call me Shirley,
never.
and just don't call me late for dinner.
I've never been late for dinner in my life.
In my life.
Never.
I forget to eat
fucking me.
literally all the time, so unfortunately.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
Me
fair.
too.
Usually breakfast and lunch. But
Hey,
anyway.
dude, shit happens. It be like that sometimes.
Oh my God, I literally just forget. It's terrible. We're in week 2, technically, of playoffs, which again means we are so close to the end of the 2022-2023 NHL season, which is crazy. And thank you guys so much for joining us on this ride this year. This is obviously the inaugural season for the Pucked Up Podcast. And so thank you for those that have been with us on this journey at any point. If you hopped on and hopped off, we hope you come back. If you've been here the whole time, thanks for sticking around. This is a show that's growing and changing, and we'd love to see what you guys want to hear us talk about for the remainder of this year and then going into our second season of the podcast.
Also, thank you for dealing with our bullshit. I understand there are times we don't talk about hockey. You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should have put in there that it's all things NHL, and then like just whatever.
Then a little bit extra.
Right.
Just that
Whatever
little
else,
extra.
yeah.
Well, first, let's get some updates for how this season or how this this first round of the playoffs are going. So first up, we have the Boston Bruins versus the Florida Panthers campaign, and Bruins are leading 3-1. The only game that Florida has won, they won 6-3, which honestly is a great score for them. Otherwise, the scores for the other games were Boston 3-1, Boston 4-2, and Boston 6-2. They are also playing tomorrow. That'll be Game 5. If the Bruins win it, then they will be going on into the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Next up, we have the Maple Leafs versus the Lightning. This is another one that the Maple Leafs are leading 3-1 over the Lightning.
Who'd have thought?
Which is honestly a little surprising.
Who'd have thought?
But also maybe not. Depends on who you are.
Right.
So Tampa kicked the pants off of the Maple Leafs 7-3 in the first game. And then it was the Maple Leafs trying to do that to Toronto 7-2, which these crazy high scoring games, I can't. The next 2 games have been much closer, with Toronto 4-3 in overtime and then Toronto 5-4 in overtime. So they seem to have settled down, and they're battling it out right now.
Well, and
for
when,
sure.
When you said depends on who you ask, it's literally if you ask Maple Leafs fans, they're not surprised. If you watch everyone, if you talk to anyone else here, that's an NHL fan, they'll be like, "Wait, they're winning their first round series? What?"
Yeah. Fucking colossal.
What? That's not the meme. You guys got to lose in the first round to keep it consistent.
Exactly. I mean, anything could happen though. I said, they're still on Game 5, which will be happening Thursday, at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we'll see what the shit happens from that, because you really never know.
No, and these two teams are relatively evenly matched. So I mean, you know, this is by no means indicative of the Lightning's ability. I feel like we all know how good they are. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So the next we have the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders, surprising no one. Carolina is leading that series 3-1. The first game, the scores were 2-1 Carolina, 4-3 in overtime Carolina, 5-1 for the Islanders, and then 5-2 again for Carolina. And they're playing right now. And I can give you a score update as well for those who are interested. It will change because they like literally, well, maybe they actually are close.
Yeah,
Let's
this is
pull
all
that up.
time of recording for those.
This is all time of recording.
We record these on Tuesdays and they go up
and
Fridays.
The game just ended, 3-2 Islanders. So that means that
Oh, wow.
things have changed a little bit here.
It is now 2-2.
And it's still Carolina leading 3-2.
Oh, 3-2. That's right. 3-2.
Yep. 3-2. So that means that this could go all the way to a game 7, y'all. Carolina could have put it away tonight, but they were unable to. What a bummer.
They fucking choked.
All right. Next
that's
up,
what
we have the New York Rangers versus the New Jersey Devils. This series is tied at 2-2. This is one that we definitely expect is going to have to go all the way.
I would be shocked
have been
if it doesn't go
battling.
7.
I will be so shocked if it doesn't go
Totally
7.
shocked.
Absolutely. So the first game, Rangers beat New Jersey 5-1. They also beat them 5-1 in the second game as well. Third game, New Jersey finally came back in a 2-1 victory in overtime. And then the most recent game was 3-1 New Jersey. They're playing on Thursday, also at 7:30 Eastern. So we look forward to seeing the outcome of that. I mean, go Devils, honestly, but that's just me because I want
Right.
my predictions to come true.
I
right
mean,
there
that's a
with ya.
good. That's a good prediction. I don't know. I'm rooting for the Rangers here, so we'll see.
Boo.
Honestly,
Go
and like
Hiss.
I don't mind whoever
Go
wins,
Hiss,
but
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the Rangers.
Well, we'll see what happens. Those have been interesting games for sure to watch.
Oh, yeah.
The next one, which actually we're going to talk about some things from this most recent game here later on in the podcast. But next up, we have the Colorado Avalanche versus the Seattle Kraken, another series that's tied at 2-2. Seattle took the first game 3-1. Colorado took the second game 3-2. Colorado took the third game 6-4. And the most recent game, Seattle won 3-2 in overtime after a pretty serious injury on the ice as well. So it was an impressive game for them to be able to finish after everything sort of calmed down. Their next game is tomorrow night, Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Again, this is a series that I see. I mean, it's bare minimum it has to go to 6, but I think it'll make its way to 7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be our
Next
upset
up-
too. That could very
That
much so
could
be
be.
like the big upset of the whole playoffs.
And I mean, I'm rooting for Seattle on that one.
Same.
Like, let's make sure
Oh,
that's clear.
100%.
Like
I
like
love that
100%.
underdog story for them.
Yeah, I like the Avs,
Right.
and it'd be cool to see them, at least attempt to repeat. But let's be real. I don't think there's a single person outside of Avalanche fans that aren't pulling for the Kraken here.
And the Kraken,
Right.
like, they just have such an incredible, like, community that they're building.
I know.
So I'd really like to see that be strengthened through winning a cup, or at least making a deep run for it.
Right.
Next up is another tied series. Again, most of the ones coming into tonight, except for the one game that was decided mid-recording, is everything is either 2-2 or 3-1. This one was also 2-2 versus the Minnesota Wild versus the Dallas Stars, which I know Danger has been watching feverishly.
Yes.
Yeah. I have
So-
feelings.
Oh,
Loud
I know.
feelings. Big, huge, massive feelings.
So Minnesota took the first game 3-2 in 2 overtimes. They needed 2 overtimes to come to
Which
that
was
decision.
crazy.
Which
That was nuts.
Crazy.
And now there's
Um,
like 2 or 3 other teams that have gone to double overtimes.
Yeah.
But we were the first to do it. So we were like
Very
the
first game out of the
trendsetters,
gate,
right?
we were like, let's make
Yeah,
this as long
we
as
were like,
possible.
we're gonna fucking put everybody else to the test or something. Some player was talking about having mustard packets for protein in between periods.
That's
That wasn't a
good.
wild
That's-
player, but it was.
That's the most
That's
hockey
funny.
player shit I've ever heard
Right.
in my entire
Yeah.
life.
They can get
So-
catered food, and he's chugging mustard packets in the locker room.
Let's do this.
Anyway.
Protein.
So game 2, Dallas took 7-3. Game 3, Minnesota came back 5-1. Game 4, Dallas won 3-2, another tight game, and then they are playing right now, and it looks like it is still 3-0, but that we still got basically the whole third period to get through.
Yeah,
So
it's the top of the
anything could
third,
happen.
but yeah.
Yeah.
As
So
one of the
again, we're
announcers keeps
all
saying, it
rooting for
only takes
Minnesota.
one.
It does. It only
Thank
takes
you.
one.
Appreciate it. It only takes one to turn it around, but
Absolutely.
I'm definitely disappointed with other things. We'll talk about it
Yeah,
later.
we'll
It's a
talk about
topic we're gonna get to, so
Absolutely.
I don't
Next
want to
up, we have
hijack early.
Next up, we have the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Winnipeg Jets. Shocking no one. The Vegas Golden Knights are leading 3-1 in their series as well. Winnipeg came out strong with a 5-1 victory in Game 1. Then the Knights came back 5-2 in the second game, 5-4 in double overtime in the third game, and then Vegas winning again 4-2 in Game 4. Their next game is Thursday at 10 p.m. Another one of those late ones since they're out on the other coast.
The other coast.
The other
The other
coast.
coast.
I'm the good coast. They're the other coast. I think Vegas is going to take it, and I would not be surprised if they took it Thursday. To be quite honest.
Yeah.
I will say it's cool. My best friend works at T-Mobile Arena, and she's said that each game that place has been fucking rocking, and it's like that for all the
I'm sure.
playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
But
the only thing that I've heard about Vegas that I don't love, and we talked about it in our Discord, so if you want to join that and get in on the conversation, the links will be somewhere where you find information about us. But Vegas evidently took all of the pedals off the exercise bikes in the Jets locker room to fuck with them, because most players like to sit on stationary bikes to keep themselves warm during intermission time.
See,
and like I just feel like that's kind of fucking immature.
It's
I get it,
childish.
hot drink's funny,
Yeah.
but like come on.
I am for certain hazing, like the visiting team. Painting the visiting locker room pink, I fucking love that kind of shit, right?
That's funny because that doesn't actually impact their play. You know what I mean?
It doesn't impact their ability to play throughout an entire game, and keeping your muscles warm is very important in between periods. And so this really just put the other team at a detriment, and that's not fair.
I want to be the one to play devil's advocate, and I know Elliot Friedman's the one that reported this, and we've all discussed here, Friedman never usually misses. My biggest thing is I want to know the credibility of this story in general, because this sounds like something super childish, which is why I'm like, hold on. I'm not saying I don't believe it, but I'm saying, how much do we know about who said
thing,
no, and that's fair. That's a fair thing.
But my thing is, how much crazy shit have we seen in the MLB? It's not a stretch for me to believe that this could happen in the NHL too.
Right.
Yeah. That is fair.
It doesn't strain credulity for me. Either way, if it's not happening, great. So glad for them.
Right.
Yeah.
But in a world where that could happen, it's stupid, and we don't advise that you do it.
I mean,
basically.
It's to think about really quick. Sure, it's funny, but you're kind of fucking with someone else's groove, and you know these are they're professional athletes. This is their job. You don't want to fuck somebody up
put
like
a
that.
fucking life-size cutout of the Rock in the locker room.
Yeah, or just slap a dick in someone's fucking locker. That's funny.
Right.
But
Right.
Yeah,
but don't
that is
impact
some childish
other
shit.
people's ability to play. That's
exactly
just an unacceptable amount.
That being said, in a high school setting, sure, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
In a high school setting,
different.
that's absolutely different.
Yeah,
because also high school settings, usually the games aren't that serious. You know what I mean?
Right,
they're not,
and that's where they should be building up the tolerance for some of this other hazing that you're going to get in college and professional.
Yeah, you're going to get
teams
shit
to an extent.
So then the last series we have to talk about tonight is also tied at 2-2, and that is the Los Angeles Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers. So LA took the first round in overtime with a 4-3 victory. Edmonton then followed up with a 4-2 victory. Now it went back to LA with a 3-2 overtime victory, then back to Edmonton with a 5-4 overtime victory. Can these two teams finally, maybe tonight, not have an overtime game, for the love of God? Their poor fans must be so exhausted every night after watching these games.
What this sounds like to me? This sounds
What?
like the typical Pacific Division teams facing off in the playoffs. That's what it sounds like.
I mean, this to me sounds like it's a well-matched, what do you call them?
It's a good
Well-matched
series. It's
teams.
two good
I can't think of
two
words.
good teams that seem to be matched up pretty well. And
Yeah.
you know what? LA has stepped up in a way that I wasn't fully expecting. Like, I knew how good they were going in. But even the quality of their play, they've stepped up big time in the playoffs. And there's a lot of young players in that team.
There are.
Right.
With a lot less experience. So it's good to see.
Yeah. Just to give an update as of time of recording, Edmonton is up 2-1 in their game tonight, but like they're literally only halfway through the first. So there's a lot more hockey to go there before we'll know what the outcome of that is and whether or not that will continue or who will take the lead, even if temporarily, because that's another one that I see. I think it's gonna stay like that, and we might have a lot of game sevens in our future. So that's kind of where we're standing with the Stanley Cup playoffs in the first round right now.
Yeah, it's been a blast to watch, and there's nothing better than quality series. In the first round. In the first round, I've always said the first round of the playoffs sets the tone for everything. And we'll talk in a minute a little more about
that's actually
tones.
a great segue into the tone, because we all have commented on how violent this series has been so far. I mean, I know playoff hockey is hard and fast and they come out physical, and there is an expected increase in physical play. But this year especially, it's really seemed like people maybe are out to hurt each other. I don't know. So like why don't we, Chris, I know you have some thoughts on that. Why don't you start us off?
I do. All right. So normally in the playoffs, and this is another topic we'll be covering it like shortly, but normally in the playoffs, the one thing you see is kind of a looser officiating. In they kind of just let everyone play.
Right.
That's not the tone we're getting.
No.
In every game that I have seen in the playoffs, there has either been one fight or more. Everyone goes at it. Players taking cheap shots at each other. Players hurting each other. And listen, as a former player, a former athlete, I love competitiveness. I love aggression to a point. I love that stuff. But there's a line that when you start taking blatant cheap shots and hurting people, that's where you have to say, hey, let's slow down. Obviously, the most notable, Cale Makar getting suspended for a nasty hit. Who was it? Dumba just got thrown out for
Foligno.
Or Foligno. Was it Dumba that took that hit? That really nasty one? Who wasn't on the Wild the other day?
Dumba had one in game 1 or 2. He had a hit against one of the Dallas players, which is why Dallas continues to boo Dumba, but Minnesota just continues to boo Suter, which he apparently doesn't understand why we're booing him.
I mean,
it's just a whole other thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's
but I played for Minnesota. It's like, go fuck yourself.
You?
Yeah, you played here, but
is that what you call playing?
Yeah.
Right? It's just a whole other issue. But Dumba was involved in one hit. Foligno has just been targeted, and we'll talk more about the officiating and some of the calls being made, because it's the same shit we see it being a Minnesota fan.
How many game misconduct penalties were there the other day?
6. 4 against the Wild and 2 for Dallas.
Did you guys watch the first 2 Vegas Winnipeg games?
No.
I did
because it was fight after fight.
Yeah.
The Bruins and
the
Panthers.
Sick.
Yeah. The Bruins and the Panthers have been fucking insane. Obviously
the first game and the second game, like, there were a lot of fighting, but it was like good, clean fighting. You know what I mean?
Right.
And some bickering and shit on the ice.
Like playoff
but
shit.
It's
between division rivals, sure.
Right.
Well, and we'll get to
100%.
as well, like how what the Wild's run is looking like. But I think the bigger issue here is that, like, every team there have been questionable hits in every single game.
Oh yeah.
Like, we're not talking about physical play that it's like, oh, unfortunate that they landed that way. But
No,
in every game, there's been at least one hit where it's like,
and
that's
there have been those hits, of course, where it's an unfortunate hit, or a clean hit, an unfortunate landing. That's happened on every team out there.
Right.
But there have definitely, for every one of those, there are, 2 or 3 that are like, okay, that's an unnecessary hit, and you're not playing good, clean hockey.
Right. And that's been my biggest thing is, and every time I'm watching games, I'm sitting here, and the aggression level, it's not even turned up to 10. It's turned up to like fucking 30. Like, what are we doing, guys?
Right.
You're not
and
only,
I mean, there's,
no, like, not only, no, you're fine. Like, not only are we seeing, like, just the aggression, like, I don't think they're thinking about, these are people, this is someone's livelihood. Like, you hurt them, that changes things for them. Not only that, that sets a tone for the entire playoffs.
Right.
And you're saying, I'm gonna fuck you up, and you better bring it, or just be prepared for the hurt train.
Right.
And how many teams now are going to have to worry about injuries that they're going to have to adjust to? Every single team has at least had one injury that now they have to change because of nonsense aggression. Like, it's nonsense aggression. There's no need for it.
Yeah, and like, we love a fight. We've talked about it multiple times on the show, how much we enjoy the fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that we have seen more fights than ever.
Yeah.
Which again is fine, but they still seem to be penalizing the fight more than they're penalizing the action.
Yeah.
Which just means that there's going to be more fighting because players believe in ice justice. You know what I mean? Like,
and I mean,
just
and like, so I'm sure I'll get blasted in the comments for this. People being like, "Oh, it's a full contact sport." I know it's a full contact sport.
It is.
There's a difference. There's a difference between full contact sport, physicality, and breaking rules that are put in place so players don't get fucking hurt.
Right.
That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing
it's
people
target. It's the intentional.
And it's it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
We see it every year at the end of the season when players have their presser when they're, they don't make it into the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about oh, I was actually playing through a majority of the season with a fractured whatever or all this stuff. And it's always like, oh my God, I can't believe they're putting their body through that. But then when they get eliminated in playoffs or they make it all the way to the end, what have you, the injuries that they talk about then are like scary that they're playing through.
Fucking wrecked.
It's head or back injuries.
Yeah, and so, like, when we're seeing this level of aggression, I'm so concerned to see what kind of injuries we're talking about for these players to have. Everyone has been really critical of the NFL for the way that they have handled traumatic brain injuries because they're not handled at all, right? Like, those players are coming out and they have had incredible changes to their personality, to their ability to live, to play with their kids, all that kind of stuff, because they had TBIs they sustained while in the NFL, and then were made to continue playing games and continue getting injured.
This past season is a perfect example of that. Look at Miami quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. There were 2 times he took massive shots, was taken off of the field because of obvious concussions, and then was back on the field. Like,
he never should have been allowed back on the field.
Like, we need to hold that same energy for the NHL. If we're going to be critical of the NFL for letting Tua back onto the field, then we also need to be critical for the NHL for allowing this kind of physicality to happen, where players feel like they need to be there for their team and come back onto the ice even though they are gravely injured.
Right. And I will say the NHL is, out of all professional sports league, the NHL is really good about injuries. I think it's less of allowing the physicality and it's more of allowing this specific type of physicality to just go unpunished. Like, I don't think it's much of the injury portion as it is really to allow, like, the league needs to crack down and be like, no, dude, seriously, this is not cool, and lay the hammer down. I think they should have laid the hammer down on Makar a little harder to set a precedent. Just saying.
Well, so, and that's the thing is that, like, if they lay the hammer down and if they're like, hey, if we continue to see this, we're going to continue suspending your entire fucking team, and now you have an AHL team playing in the goddamn NHL Stanley Cup playoffs.
Bet you they stop real fast.
That's when we're going to see the stoppage.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we need to see refs step up on the ice and not be little fucking baby back bitches that are afraid to make the big calls and afraid to give an actual 5-minute major for something that warrants it. Like Makar's hit, that was late. You know what I mean? That was incredibly late. And again, we'll talk about it, but like that kind of stuff, they reviewed it and they're like, well, it was clear that maybe neither of them knew where the puck was, so it could have been presumed that it wasn't a late hit. And it was like, we're not talking about ifs and maybes and what the players maybe thought. We're talking about what actually fucking happened.
Yeah, like, did anyone see that
well
hit?
Into the nets.
He wasn't even remotely near the puck, and Makar just fucking bodied McCann.
Yeah. And Makar was like, I don't see anything wrong with it. I was just finishing my check like we're taught to.
Dude,
and that's what I'd also like to see have happen. Like, if you make a bad hit, I'd like you to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
oh, yeah.
I'd like you to
100%.
say, like, that's fucked up. I hope, he's okay. That's not the kind of game I'd like to be playing. And I'm going to work hard to not be that player again. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not fucking hard. But I guess there's some level like not wanting to take accountability because then Dops has a reason to say you're suspended. But Dops is going to suspend Makar anyway. Even though, and I genuinely believe this, I don't think Makar is a dirty player.
No,
I think
like
that
him.
This is
I don't
out of
think
the
he is
normal
either.
for him, which again is why we're talking about this. Why is this happening? You know what I mean? Which actually, that is our question of the week. Why does there seem to be an increased physical or aggressive play style in this postseason in comparison to others? Anyone have any thoughts as to like why this year's worse?
Yeah, so I've been talking. Danger, go ahead.
No, like, and it's hard to say. I mean, it was a tough season. I don't know. Like, I don't know what has changed in the mindset of so many of the players to think that these blatant, aggressive hits are okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it, in particular, in the postseason,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know what would have changed.
Well, I mean, we talked about it multiple times, but it seemed like after the trade deadline, we had an increased amount of physicality and aggression on ice.
Which is true. And maybe it was people being upset about being traded, not being traded, whatever. But that's still not a good enough reason to be being so blatantly hurt.
I don't think it's a good reason at all. I think that something started
being chippy
around
out on the ice is one thing, but
yeah, I think that something started around the trade deadline that no coach and no NHL official or higher up put a stop to, and so it's a runaway train situation where we started the physicality way too soon. And so now we're seeing it be prominent in every single game. Whereas normally, like, yeah, you're getting chippy when you get near the end because you have a couple of like the wild card battle games are really, really intense because they're trying to finalize their spots, right?
Yeah.
But we were seeing it in games that like neither of these teams were ever going to be a wild card and they were still beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And I think that attitude started too soon, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. But that's just my
let's be real. The tone was actually set in preseason, wasn't it? You guys remember how many players got suspended in the fucking preseason?
We did have several.
It was like suspended. 7 or 8 for either aggressive hits or
hits to the
just
head
bad penalty, or hits, specifically hits to the head, and just overall, horrible judgment calls on their part. And I feel like that set the tone for a lot of the season. I feel like we had a little more this year than we did the previous couple years in suspensions, which could either mean one of two things: that Dops is cracking down at shit, or players are becoming increasingly aggro. And
so I don't think that Dops is cracking down, because there's a ton of stuff that I'm like, I can't believe Dops didn't review that.
Right.
I think we're just seeing an increasingly aggro situation, and I do wonder if some of that is because the NHL is taking this stance against fighting on the ice, and so people are like, well, if I'm not allowed to fight, then I'm going to lay a hit.
Yeah, I'm just going to smoke someone.
And they're exactly, they're being less cautious about the hits because that to them is the only way that like legally they can get retaliation for someone else doing a bad hit.
Right.
Where it used to be like, okay, we'll get into a fight, and then that's kind of it. Like now both of our teams are fired up, we move on with the day. But we've seen like an increase of the same players fighting each other again and again and again in the same game too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And like for me, listen, I obviously a lot of people are upset about the officiating, and rightfully so. I look at it as like officiating is officiating in every sport. We can love it or hate it. There's not really much we can do. I feel like what we can do is set a benchmark for how you handle overly aggressive play, which I think is a little more important than yes, the officiating it's obviously an important thing, but I feel like player safety should be prioritized a little higher. Plain and simple, shit needs to change because this isn't cool.
But I do hold the refs somewhat accountable, coming from someone who has worked in, like, I coach youth lacrosse and I have been for years. I'd noticed that if the refs don't start the game by being like, if we see you on some bullshit, we're going to call you on it. You're going to get penalized and you're going to hurt your team.
Right.
And then they actually follow through. Whereas the refs that are like, well, yeah, it started getting a little chippy, so I'm just going to call like a push with possession here, when it was actually like a flat out cross check and it should have been a full 2 minutes. He only gets one. Because they're like, well, I don't really want to like put him in the penalty box for too long. And it's like, no, you have to. Like, you have to call it and you have to start calling it early. Otherwise, they think that they can get away with, because I'm telling you, that is what officials are telling them. Get away with as much as you can until the refs start calling it, and then tone it down. By that point, especially when we're talking about full-grown 30-year-old men on knife blades on ice, like, it's too late. You know what I mean? They have gotten too out of control for the refs to be able to like rein it in the third fucking period.
Right.
So the refs do need to step up and start, like, don't be on the ticky-tacky bullshit early.
Right.
But like, if someone is getting aggressively cross-checked, call it.
Right.
Call it.
Well, and call it evenly. And that's my biggest complaint.
Yeah.
It's like things not being called evenly for both teams.
So, Danger, why don't we talk about that? Because I know you have a lot of thoughts about the reffing, especially as it's been affecting the Wild series. But you've been watching the other games too.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, and granted, like, I haven't been giving my full attention because I'm redoing my room. But it's like background noise and trying to pay attention to it. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the officiating has been calling for one team versus the other, and it's not even across the board, which I fucking hate. Big pet peeve of mine. And I just feel like they're targeting certain players. Foligno, for one, I mean, he's gotten major penalties in 3 of like our 4 games so far. And well, I get that, you know, we as fans don't always hear everything that is said, because like Hartman got one of the 10-minute misconducts the other night where they were just giving him out left and right. And I'm sure that like that one was because of something that he said. So like, knowing as a fan that we don't know everything that is verbally said on the ice. If we look at the physicality point of it, the Wild have unfortunately had like 3 hits, I think, in this series that have looked bad. But if you break it down second by second, frame by frame, like, you can see they weren't an intentional dirty hit. It was just the unfortunate timing. And, you know, that is what it is as part of playing hockey. But I do see, like, from an outsider going, well, that's happened fucking 3 times in this series with your team. And it's like, yeah, but if you break down them one by one, how much can you really blame it, you know?
Right.
But to have so much animosity, I feel like, from the refs and the way that they're looking at and treating the Wild. And it happens for the Wild in the postseason frequently. I mean, it fucking happens during the regular season too, where it's like we play certain teams and the refs always seem to favor the other team. And it's a consistent, like, no matter who the refs are, it's like they always favor certain teams. And I think that that's something that needs to almost be analyzed and looked at, because it's like they definitely baby teams like the Penguins. Sometimes the Rangers.
I'm gonna say it. Sidney Crosby has gotten away with so much from the refs because he is NHL's like favorite baby child.
Yeah,
and like, to an extent,
Jesus,
I would say
right?
the same thing about Ovi as well. But like, the amount of shit. This is the first year that Sidney has been like in trouble with the refs because he backtalked them to a ridiculous amount. Like, and stuff like that. We do
He
see
got
it
a
all the
little
time, like you were
feisty
saying.
and got in trouble. Right. But yeah, it definitely seems to be more apparent that they're targeting certain players and certain teams, or
Let's talk about the Tom
babying
Wilson
certain
effect.
players.
Like, how
Right?
many refs will shit all over Tom Wilson just like the fans will
Yeah.
when
Right.
like we review it after the fact and it's like, okay, it really wasn't that bad, or
Right. Right.
another person has done way
And
worse and gotten nothing. And it's
right. And
the
I've had to
inequity
eat my
there.
own words a couple of times. And I think that one of them might have even been a Wilson hit or something where, like, in the moment, it looked a lot worse than it was, like, when we broke it down frame by frame,
Yeah.
and watching highlights of it where they do analyze it.
But
I've definitely had to, like, apologize and eat my own words.
I think in Tom Wilson's case,
Fuckers.
though, he has set himself a reputation that he's no longer innocent until proven guilty with a lot of people. And I get it in that sense, but
I don't think Wilson was ever innocent until proven guilty. I think he was always guilty until he was innocent.
But to Dee's point, I agree. There's been a few times this year where I'm like, you know what, Wilson had made very dirty plays in the past, but this year he seems to be better than he ever has been. I mean, and most notably, he got punched in the face by someone on the bench, and he got in trouble. Like, what?
Yeah, like that's what I'm talking about with refs, like seeming to have it out for certain players. Like, how can you, like, Wilson retaliated after being hit from the bench, and the other player got nothing, and Wilson got a 5-minute major.
It's because he retaliated. That's exactly what it is.
Right.
It is, but like, and I get that. Like, I get that NHL is trying to crack down on that. But what happened is that situation happened, and then you have to penalize both. But then this week, and I forget which team it was on, I made a mental note of it, but there was a player who got pushed over into the boards. I think it was an Oilers player, and started a fight in the bench after he had been pushed into the opposing team's bench.
That's the most hockey thing ever.
To start fights in and from the benches. You know what I mean? Like, no longer
because you're no longer on the field of play at that point. You know,
exactly. But like doing that, penalizing Wilson for the retaliation, did sort of tell other people, like, oh, I can do this shit now? Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. You know what I mean? And that's what's happened, is that the refs have set a precedent with, like Danger said, babying certain players or being overly critical of others. And I think it's bled over into a lot of situations. And that's what's caused a lot of frustration too, because I can tell you Caps players were furious that Wilson got the retaliation call on that. And they went out and were fucking spicy
and
for the rest
rightly
of the game
so,
because they were mad.
Rightly so.
But that is, again, what we're now seeing in the playoffs, right? Like, if they think that their teammate is being unfairly targeted by officials, guess who they're not taking it out on? The officials. They're taking it out on the other players.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that, I think, is a contributing factor as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand as to why, because players don't want to be penalized if they take it out on the refs. But I think you're also setting yourself into a box where you're now just fucking around with your opponents, and they're not going to be so nice to you the next day, you know?
Well, we have seen it several times this year where people have been fined for calling out the refs. That one coach in particular who said fuck you to the refs 47 times and got kicked out of the game comes to mind. But like, other players too have gotten fined for being mean to the refs. And so there is definitely a precedent of, like, well, you can't do that to the refs, so who else are they going to do it to? And I'm sorry, but most hockey players aren't raised with a sense of, like, turn the other cheek, or you know what I mean? Like,
most hockey players are petty as fuck.
Exactly. And so you're only giving them an opportunity by refusing to allow hockey players to voice their displeasure with the reffing and get any actual changes within the reffing organization. Like, their only outlet left is to make the other team feel bad for having the refs presumably in their pocket. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't agree with it, but I totally understand where it's coming from.
Oh yeah, same. I mean, it kind of, well, we can't do anything to the refs, so this is how we show our displeasure. And I understand it too. Like, it's not right. It's not how things should be handled, but it's kind of the unfortunate, side effect of the way things have been done this year, It's
the side effect of NHL policy, really. And so until we see policy change, or until we see Gary Bettman coming out and making a strong statement and following it up with like actual action, I don't think we're going to see this level of aggression die down.
I feel like he has to at this point. Like,
I would
in
hope
the
so,
off
but I
season,
don't know.
I'm sure he will, because the players are forcing his hand. That's really what's happening. If the fact that Makar got suspended, I think is a step in the right direction.
Agreed.
I feel like they need to very much so start holding players more accountable at this point. Because again, you're a professional, you should know better.
Right.
But I
You're
feel
an
like
adult.
between the reffing situation, the aggression of the players, I feel like this offseason, NHL is going to have to do something.
Yeah.
I feel like we're at the point where they're forcing their hand to the point where we will see at least some sort of action in July and August.
Yeah.
You know.
All right.
I hope so.
I would love to be that optimistic, but I don't think that we'll actually see them make any changes.
Well,
and if we do
fair.
it, like, I will happily eat my words.
Yeah,
but
well, that's fair.
I think been building up to this for a long time, and they've yet to make any effort to change it. And
I
think it's going to get a lot worse before we see it
I
get
would
better.
also kind of agree with that I don't think this is enough of a boiling point. I feel like the water is hot enough that we're feeling it because all three of us don't think that people should be like this injured doing their job.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that
Yeah.
we're going to see harsher injuries that then they're going to be like, oh shit, we do actually have to say something. We do actually have to do something to make a change.
I will say though, for us, and this is obviously, for those of you listening, this is different for us in our aspect because we've been, like Danger says all the time, we've been fans our whole lives, like we're loyal. But for the casual fan, this is really exciting. People who don't normally watch hockey, they're loving this. Even Danger mentioned Charles Barkley, who's
Barkley,
an NBA all-time great, is enjoying the NHL playoffs as opposed to the NBA playoffs, which speaks volumes.
He said he was like, I've been watching NHL, man. Like, this is boring comparatively, which is great. Like, if this pulls more fans in, that's great. And I'm all here for that. Because I think the physicality of hockey is an important part of hockey, right? And we've talked about that before. But it's the blatant intent to injure and
that's
the
where
maliciousness
we need to draw the line.
where we need exactly. But the refs need to know how to
ref.
I just all of a sudden heard it got really loud again.
Oh, you're fine.
But
I think like eliminating fighting, the NHL went down a bad path with that because I do think that has directly caused this level of aggression. And so I think if they allow fighting to come back just a little bit, you're still gonna have the fan engagement because that's honestly what got me like into hockey. Was like, oh holy shit, these grown men are beating the crap out of each other and they're allowed to. That's kind of cool.
Well, and I've said it before, but like being able to be pissed off at somebody about something, whether it's something they said or did to you or to another player, you go out, you drop the gloves, you punch each other in the face, and you go sit in a timeout, and it's over. Yeah. And it's not that animosity through the entire game for the most part that you see in some other professional sports, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what draws people into hockey. And I love that fact.
Yeah.
But we have to protect that without having the maliciousness. And it's got to be it's hard to draw the line in the sand of what the rules are or what the specific, like, this is okay, but this isn't. Like, how do you know the intent of somebody's hit? Which is really hard. And I'm not trying to discount that. That's a really hard line to figure out. But you have to do it, and you have to do it across the board.
Right.
And I'm going to say this as well. I think that comes down to coaching too.
Yeah.
Like we have seen, especially this last couple of years, the Caps organization have been talking very openly about what they're doing with Tom Wilson to make sure that he understands why he was viewed as a predatory player and help him to change that and help him to understand this is how you properly lay a hit that's not going to get you fucking sent home for 5 games.
Right.
And so I think that we need to see that leadership in the locker room as well. Like the NFL or NHL owners and whatever also need to be making policy changes, but we also need coaches who are going to say, hey, that was really fucked up that you did that. You're a healthy scratch next game. And they need to do some some shit within their own organization to curb it. because nobody
and
wants to
even
be a
the
helpless
Wild did
scratch.
that this year. Like Hartman had like 3 games where he kept drawing penalties for mouthing off and doing shit and whatever, and then Evanson finally said, "You know what? You're done. Like I'm gonna bench you." And Hartman spoke out openly about that, made him realize, okay, I took it too far, to the extent to where like, okay, it's kind of funny, but like he was like honestly going, okay, I understood then, 3 games in a row was too much, and what I was doing in each game was too much. And he wasn't mad one bit about getting sat.
Which I
but I
think
agree
is
100%. I think more coaches need to do that shit.
I think that's what we've seen this year with the Jordan Binnington saga, is that he hasn't been made to sit out.
Yeah, and he's just been doing his bullshit the whole time.
Kept doing his shit. And the coaches
And
have
now
not
he
held
ends
him
up the
responsible
laughing
in a
stock of the
large enough way.
NHL. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah,
and
absolutely.
now
But
he's
he
just getting
directly
laughed at
injured
by
his
people.
team.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
were the Blues
Multiple
cup
times.
contenders this year? Probably not. Could they have like at least
They could have made the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, they
absolutely.
could have made the playoffs. They could have made a bid for it. I don't think they would have gotten very far, but they could have definitely advanced.
Yeah.
But because of this bullshit, and then they ended, fans weren't supportive of them because of the shenanigans with Binnington, and I mean,
exactly.
The same could be said about like Evander Kane in past years, or Todd Bertuzzi when he played. Certain
Todd
players
Bertuzzi
would really be like the where it affected the entire team.
Right.
I think Binnington.
That's a really good point.
I think Binnington learned a really hard lesson this year, in that it's cool that you won your city a cup, but they don't play those games. You don't get a pass at everything. Look at Matt Murray.
Right.
Matt Murray won Pittsburgh a couple cups, and look where he's at now.
Yep.
Another one who's causing a lot of problems. So you don't get a pass just because you're a champion.
Nope.
But I do want to say, and this kind of circles back to I guess the league, quote unquote, cutting down on fighting. I think it's less of the league, and I think it's more of the players coming up. You see a lot less, and this starts at a youth level. These kids are really becoming playmakers and scorers, as opposed, and that's what they're watching. That's what they want to be, as opposed to like the gritty grinder enforcer players, which we still have coming up, but it's fewer and fewer. And I think it's less to do with the league, and I think it's more to do with the younger generation coming up. Which again, like we talked about,
I think it's a mix.
And we talked about this previously, earlier in the season, about, the youth movement and how things are changing, how the game itself has changed.
Right.
And I think that definitely plays a part in a lot of it. But
to an extent, but I still don't think that like getting rid of fighting out is going to be the answer.
I don't, and from what I've heard, I haven't heard the NHL say anything like specifically that they want to get rid of fighting.
They definitely have mentioned that they're cracking down on
it.
I can see them
it.
cutting down on it for sure, but the idea of getting rid of it altogether is stupid as fuck. I saw an article
where some article said that they have considered cutting it out altogether. And that's when I was like, that's absurd. That's such a huge part of the hockey sport. I mean, getting rid of the cross-checking and hitting from behind and the sneaky hits, like making sure your opponent sees you coming, is a huge part of any professional sport. Think about football tackles. If you don't know you're about to get fucking plowed by another massive human being, you're going to be screwed. Right. But if you see it coming and you know how to take that hit, it's benefit. I mean, you're 9 times out of 10 okay. There will always be those unfortunate hits.
Yeah. But I think even with cracking down on the fighting, and it's very clear that they are, because of the amount of major penalties that we've seen this year for fighting in general, I think that the cracking down is really what's getting it so like crazy.
And I would be,
because people feel like they don't have another recourse, because either they're going to get a 5-minute for fighting, or they're only going to get a 2-minute for bashing somebody's fucking brain in.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take those 2 minutes. You know what I mean?
Fucking cross-checking straight into the boards, where like Dallas did that, where they to Sunquist.
Yeah, because now I'm considered having like plus 3 points. You know, like, or 3 minutes that I would have been out for getting the 5 for roughing or for fighting.
Right.
And instead I'm just getting 2.
Well,
so like, yeah, I hurt my team, but not as bad as I would have if I had dropped gloves.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's stupid.
Right. Well, and I think like if you're going to cut down on something too, do it at the beginning of a season. Don't do it at the fucking playoffs. Because this is shit that they've been able to get away with like all year.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, in the playoffs you're going to try to get away with like that extra push, which could get into the dangerous levels, right? But for certain checks or hits like that you've been okay with all year long, and then to be calling them as these malicious 10-minute misconducts is absurd.
Yeah.
You know,
There
because
needs to
you're
be
not setting a
consistency.
precedent for what the rules are. Exactly. The consistency isn't there from the beginning of the season. And if you're going to make changes, you need to do it at the beginning of the season, in my opinion.
Right. I think only time will tell on how if this works itself out through the rest of the playoffs, what this is going to look like in the off season.
Right.
I think only time will tell, personally.
Well, with that, why don't we get into one of my favorite segments, which is our naughty boys and our injuries.
Do we want to mention the Calgary Flames news really fast before we jump into that?
I didn't have it on the show sheet, so I wasn't going to, but if you'd like to, sure.
Oh, I think it's important. The city of Calgary just reached an official deal and agreement with the Calgary Flames on a new stadium. That's pretty big.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. That happened today. The announcement was made in Victoria Park, which is in the River District on the east end of downtown Calgary, to replace the current Scotiabank Saddledome, which the team has played at since '83. The project is estimated to be around $1.2 billion. There is no timetable for the completion, but it will house the Calgary Flames, Calgary Wranglers of the AHL, Calgary Hitmen of the Western Hockey League, and the Calgary Roughnecks of the National Lacrosse League. But yeah, shout out to the Calgary Flames for getting a new stadium, although I'm kind of sad because the Saddledome is iconic. It's the only arena in the NHL that has such an odd-shaped roof. So I guess we'll see when that gets completed and what that looks like.
Yeah, right. Well,
all right, Dave,
going into the bad boys segment, we have had a couple of different suspensions and penalties. On the 18th, Michael Bunting from the Maple Leafs did get suspended for 3 games for an illegal check to the head and interference against Eric Ciernak. On the 24th, Cale Makar, which was yesterday, did get suspended for 1 game for interference against Jared McCann.
Which I'm surprised at called interference, by the way.
Right, I know. It's such a bullshit reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an interference call, but it should have been called something else.
Right, well, that's what we're saying. It shouldn't have been interference. It should have been a whatever, roughing, whatever you could have called it. It could have been called a million different things. On the 22nd, Sam Lafferty of Maple Leafs did get fined $3,108.11 for cross-checking Ross Colton. And then on the 23rd, right, Matthew Tkachuk from the Panthers did get fined $5,000 for cross-checking Garrett Hathaway. Hathaway.
Yeah, poor Garnett.
Right? Poor baby.
It was pretty brutal. Like, if anyone, I don't know, Chris, if you watched it.
I did see it.
I know you were following the Bruins stuff. It was a pretty brutal cross-check. It absolutely deserved the 5,000.
He got lit up on Twitter. Whew.
Yeah.
Dude, everyone was all over Tkachuk, man. That was... And honestly, he kind of deserved all that because that was not cool.
And it was one of those things that we were just talking about where it was like, that was with intent to hurt. Like, you didn't need to do that. And your team is like losing in a big way in these games.
Yeah, there's no need for
that. Which
that.
probably potentially a lot of that
suspension.
Yeah.
Right. And the anger and the frustration for losing so horribly is probably what provoked that.
Yeah.
But again, like, that's an anger management issue at that point to an extent.
I will say Garnett Hathaway used to play for the Caps, and he is a bit of a pest. So I am sure that there was some chirps that he was
Something
making
said.
that
Sure.
Kachuk took offense to. Absolutely, but still, that doesn't warrant the cross check that he received.
Yeah,
Like,
it wasn't okay.
It wasn't okay.
No.
But I'm sure that Garney said some shit. Like, knowing him, I'm sure
Which
he
is
said
fair.
some shit.
Which is totally fair. And at least, like, there are the certain players that, you know, like, can be a little more provoking with what they say. Again, to an extent, should a chirp provoke that kind of a response? Probably not. I mean, that
to me, a chirp
to an
should
extent
just
is your...
it's just drop the gloves and, like, you know, punch each other in the face a couple of times.
Slap each other around a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not this. I mean, like we talked about before, the cross-checking and like some of these other illegal hits are where more the injuries are coming from than from just a straight fight.
Well, because half the time they're really just hugging each other and like wiggling around on the ice.
And
you know
dancing
what I
on
mean?
the ice. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, 100%.
But it gets it out.
100%.
And then instead they're getting cross-checked, which is broken bones and punctured lungs and concussions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. For injuries, for Boston, we have Patrice Bergeron, who is nursing an upper body ailment, projected that he will dress for Game 5. David Krejci. Sure. Is battling an upper body injury, remains also to be seen if he will play. This was as of like probable Wednesday as of Saturday. So we'll see. For Carolina, they have half their flippin' team. Frederick Anderson is nursing an illness. He is expected to play in Game 5 for them. Jack Drury, it has an upper body injury, undetermined if he will play. Jake Gardner.
I think it's Gardner.
Yeah. He has been shifted to long-term IR with a hip injury. He has been out all season, though. Andre Kossi is back on long-term reserve list with that concussion that he's been battling back and forth for a while. And Teuvo Teravainen. He has been out for a long time, but he may be able to come back for Game 5. He had been, that's a lie. Hold on. I scrolled down. I cleaned my mouse and it's spinning faster and weirder.
It's like super on top of it.
Yeah. He was sidelined after undergoing that surgery to repair a broken hand. He'll be out the beginning of May, so they just posted that in case Carolina
he's able to.
on.
Which, like, let's be honest, they're going to continue on. They're winning 3-2 in the series.
Right. For Colorado, we have Darren Helm, who is bothered by an injury to an unlisted location. It is uncertain if he will play in Game 5. Jack Johnson is nursing a lower body injury, leaving his status for Game 5 in question. And Valerie Nikushkin, he is tending to a personal matter. Remains to be seen if he will be in Game 5. It was reported that he's left the hotel with a massive security detail after potentially receiving some threats against him.
I also heard that there was an incident involving alcohol in the hotel, so it might have been that like someone like got a little too drunk and a little too aggressive, and so that's why they added the additional security on top of the other stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the reason.
Last I had heard it was that he was escorted out of the hotel but maybe it was because of this person under the influence for protection. So or maybe that person was making threats against him. I don't know, but anyway. So that's one's very new reporting, very up in the air as of right now. Right. For Dallas, we have Joe Pavelski, who's going through the concussion protocol. He will not be in Game 5. Shucks, it didn't matter. You kicked our ass anyway.
Wow, who would have thought Pavelski going through the concussion protocol?
Right.
Yeah.
We all thought he had one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and that was one of those where, like, especially once they broke down that hit, because it was definitely iffy. I think you can tell Dumba started to pull away Because had he wanted to go head to head, he definitely could have. And you can see one of the sticks, and I think I last week had said it was his own stick Pulaski got hit with. It was not. It was, I think Ryan Hartman's stick had come up and hit him in the chin, and that's what potentially knocked him out. It's hard to really tell because everything happened so fast.
Yeah, it was.
But definitely one of those unfortunate landings, but broken down. The hit was clean.
Well, and he has a
potentially
history
some
of
charging there, but
Yeah.
right. Pavelski has a history of concussions, especially in the playoffs. But as we all know, once you get one concussion, you are prone to others. So as
definitely
you
gonna
said,
get more.
it could have been
I'm proof of that.
the tap from Hartman that is what caused him
Yeah.
to be
absolutely,
extra
absolutely.
injured.
So it was definitely one of those hits that we were kind of talking about earlier, where it like looked really dirty, and that's why like all of Dallas hates Dumba right now. But at the end, when you break it down, it wasn't a malicious hit. Of course, you never know. And people are like blaming Dumba too because he's laughing in the penalty box and stuff, but you never know what is being said. Like people were chirping to him nonstop.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he's laughing about the hit that he landed. I think he's laughing about the chirps that he's hearing from Dallas.
Well, and
but I
Danger,
might be
you
wrong.
shared with me recently a video too of like fans taking it to NHL players, like one where he literally fell through the glass into the penalty box to like speak his mind to a player. So we also don't know if people behind him were telling him that he's some kind of insert.
You're trash, you're garbage, whatever. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, and Dumba
it is
is
funny
that
when
guy
a fan is like,
to
"You're a
just laugh at
dumbass."
that
It's
point.
like I'm making
Right.
4 times your salary, dude, on a single night. You
On
know
a
what
good
I mean?
day.
Like,
and with the last name of Dumba, I'm sure they were calling him dumbass, or I mean, there's
Dumbo
certain like fucking
yeah.
things you can say to make fun of him. So you just never know. So I wanted to speak out on that a little bit because I don't think that was a malicious like, haha, I'm getting away with a minor penalty on this. I think he's laughing because of the other auditory
to
things
bring up
going on and not the
someone
land.
that Danger knows I have issue with. It's not like when Revo laughed about Tom Wilson's hit after the fact and said he ran into a lion in the jungle and got what he got. Like that's different. That's him very clearly
that was much more malicious
than just laughing at who knows what. That was explicit. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt that this was not that.
At least at this point. And Dumba can be like on the verge, on the fence of being iffy. I don't think that this one was a malicious thing. Anyway. I am biased. So I try to keep my bias in the forefront of my mind at the very least. For Edmonton, we have Matthias Jean-Marc. He's dealing with a lower body injury and is yet to be determined if he will play in Game 5. Ryan Murray is still hurt, but he is shuttled on that syphilis bus to the injured reserve with a back injury, not expected to return until the beginning of May. If you don't know what the syphilis bus is,
watch our
go
other
back
videos.
and listen to previous videos. Exactly. Yeah. For Florida, we have Anthony Duclair, who is nursing an unknown injury, leaving his status for Game 5 up in the air. Aaron Ekblad is tending to an unspecified issue. He is also up in the air for Game 5. Patrick Hornquist is still out for this season, as is Spencer Knight. For LA, we have Blake Lizotte, who has a lower body injury, may or may not be in Game 5. For Minnesota, we still have Joel Eriksson Ek, who is bothered by an undetermined issue. I will say it's a lower leg, ankle, foot issue. He did attempt to play, but on his first shift out, you can see him push off and go, "Oh, fuck, that's not as healthy as I thought it was." Yeah, exactly. That one hurt. So he came off the ice almost immediately. I think he played like 20 seconds or something into his shift. And so he's back on IR right now, as is Mason Shaw. But I do have to say, it was so cool. Mason Shaw did the Let's Play Hockey at the start of the two wild games or 2 home games ago. I don't have my calendar here right now, but which was awesome. And apparently a lot of the players didn't know that he was going to do the Let's Play Hockey. And so it was really emotional for a lot of the players, which was pretty cool. For New Jersey, we have Jonathan Bernier, who is still out indefinitely. He's been out all season. For New York, we have Oliver Wahlstrom, who's been out since February with a lower body ailment. For Seattle, we have Andre Burakovsky, who has been out since the 14th. So I think that was slightly before our last show. But he had surgery to repair a lower body injury. We don't know when he'll be back on ice. Jonas Donskey has been out since January, but he is out with a concussion on concussion protocol. Yeah. John Hayden is still out for the rest of the season. And Jared McCann is the new one. He exited the last game with an undisclosed injury, yet to be established if he'll play Game 5. For Tampa Bay, we have Eric Cernak, who is tending to a head injury, may or may not be able to play in Game 5, so I'm sure they're evaluating him for concussion. Michael Easemont is dealing with an upper body injury, unknown as well for him if Game 5 will be played. And then Brent Seabrook has been out all season with that hip injury and shoulder injury. He's still recovering from. This is an interesting. Okay, so I'll read this verbatim, but for Toronto, it says Michael Bunting is undergoing a 3-game suspension for an illegal hit to the head of an opponent. He will be eligible to return for Game 5. I just haven't seen that be worded that way before.
Yeah.
Eric Gustafsson is hobbled by an upper body injury, yet to be confirmed if he'll dress for Game 5. Bobby McCann has been out since the beginning of April on long-term IR with a knee injury. The severity is unknown as of right now. Victor Met has been added to the long-term IR with a lower body injury, not expected to return until the beginning of May. Matt Murray is still out indefinitely with a head injury. Jake Muzzin has been out for the season since February with a cervical spine injury. And Nicholas Robertson has been out since January, long-term IR with a shoulder injury. So, come on, my mouse will cooperate. For Vegas, we have William Carrier is out of action with a lower body injury, most likely not to return until beginning of May. Robin Lehner is still out. He's been out for the season with that hip and shoulder surgery since September. Nolan Patrick also has been out since September with upper body issue. Logan Thompson is out until at least the beginning of May with a lower body issue. And lastly, we have for Winnipeg, Nikolai Ehlers has an upper body injury, leaving Game 5 up in the air. Sam Gagner is out for this season, which happened in March. He has to have hip surgery. John Morrissey is sidelined with a lower body issue, not expected to return until early part of May. Cole Perfetti is added to the long-term IR with an upper body injury, projected to miss at least 8 weeks of action. That was as of the 19th, so about 7 more weeks for him. David Rittich is dealing with a lower body injury, not yet confirmed if he will be able to face the Golden Knights in Game 5. And Mark Schleifele. Sure. Scheifele, Schlafel.
Danger turns into Swedish Chef every once in a while.
He left the previous game with that's the most accurate description I've ever heard of how I talk sometimes. He left the previous game with an upper body injury and remains to be seen if he will suit up against the Golden Knights in Game 5. And that ends our injury report. Thank God. Well, anyway.
Thank you so much. That is always fun to get through.
It's
thank
fun
God
to watch
that we're
Danger
down
struggle.
to 16 teams because that is
fun for you guys.
It's fun for us.
That's half the amount of struggle busting that we normally do. And it'll get easier from here on out as we eliminate
teams.
More teams until the begining of next season.
Guess what? This list
all over
gets
again.
cut in half soon.
Yeah.
Right?
Shout out to New York for not having, the Rangers for not having anybody injured right now.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
Still being tied in the series.
That. Right.
So you're healthy and it's not enough. Suck it. I'm just kidding. All right. With that, let us head into one of all of our favorite segments, the Obscure Player of the Week. So, Chris, you want to take that over?
Danger's made it clear it's not hers. So.
What?
So you made it clear it's not your favorite segment.
No, she just likes when you talk about how many penalty minutes they get.
Well, I guess what, guys?
I didn't ever diss this segment. Not once, not ever.
This player.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Don't you put that evil. No, he needs to know.
How dare you? How very dare.
How very dare.
You guys are going to love this guy's numbers for penalty minutes.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
Great. Give it to me.
So,
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Our obscure NHL player of the week is a gentleman by the name of Danny Richmond. Born in Chicago, Illinois, was drafted 31st overall in 2003 by the Carolina Hurricanes. In which, guess what he didn't do?
Win a Stanley Cup?
Correct. Because for that simple reason, he played 20 games in the NHL in 05-06, 10 of which with the Carolina Hurricanes, who eventually went on to win the Stanley Cup. He was then traded to the Chicago Blackhawks. He played up until where he basically finished his NHL portion of his career in 2007-2008. He played 49 total NHL games, 3 assists, 75 penalty minutes.
75 penalty minutes in 49 games?
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
No, but it gets better. He played...
That's like double the amount of games he played. Yeah. He got minutes for.
He also played... He had a career in the AHL and the German league. He had 284 games played, 458 penalty minutes, but he had 33 goals, 120 assists. His AHL numbers in 480 career games. Fuck the points, you guys don't care. He had 1,043 penalty minutes.
Damn, dude. You were fucking everybody up. Shit.
Fuck, dude. My man. And he had 20...
That is literally like 3 minutes a game. Almost.
He had 25 penalty minutes and 26 playoff appearances in the AHL.
Damn.
He almost had the exact same amount. 62 in 54 playoff appearances in the German league. But yeah. That is a thing that this young man had done. He did, however, come from a little bit of lineage. His father, Steve Richmond, played 159 games in the NHL for the Rangers, the Kings, the Red Wings, and the New Jersey Devils.
Very cool.
Indeed. It does not say what he is currently doing, but I know he retired from pro hockey.
Not beating the shit out of people on the ice, so there's that.
No, I know he did retire after the 2018-2019 season with... Well, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. But he did play his final game in Germany. So, I mean, hey, not a little bad taste, but my man has some serious penalty box issues.
Yeah, it's like his favorite place on earth or something.
That is a lot of penalty minutes, dude.
That's a lot of penalty minutes.
That's about over 1,500 penalty minutes between 3 different leagues in his career.
Wow. That's crazy. That's insane.
That's not even counting, like, he played for the Chicago Steel in 2001-2002, the USHL. 56 game, 129 penalty minutes.
Wow.
He had 4 penalty minutes in 6 games in the World Junior Championship for the US in 2004.
That's crazy.
My man was aggressive. But I mean, he played defense, so what do you want?
Well, what can you expect?
But shout out to Danny Richmond for being our obscure NHL player of the week.
Our obscure penalty getting player of the week is what it is this week. Since
penalty minute have an ass.
Penalty minute have an ass, exactly. Exactly.
God bless it.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week. We'll be back next week where we're going to talk about more playoff hockey because that's all we have left to look forward to in life at the moment.
Right.
That's all that's happening.
Next week's
at least
a cooking
for one
show.
Of the 3 of us.
Screw hockey. Next week it's a cooking show.
Right.
Imagine.
How crazy.
Right.
But yeah, if you guys have questions that you want us to answer, be sure to drop them in the comments or tweet them at us or wherever you can find us. Let us know what questions.
Yell them out the
Exactly.
window too. Maybe we're close to you. Yell them out the window.
Yeah,
Maybe
just
we can
shout
hear
it
you.
from the top of your lungs. You know what I mean?
Scream at the
We'll get
top
it.
of your lungs in the middle of the night. Piss off your
Hashtag
neighbors.
at pucked up.
Yeah.
And see what your neighbors think of you.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we'd love to answer those questions for you. Also, please be sure to give us a like on whichever podcast platform you are listening to this, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, and be sure to follow us there on those platforms as well. We really appreciate it. It does help. And I guess with that, we will see you mother puckers in the face-off circle next week.
This has been an LTN Media production.